about learning or behavioral objectives. Let's talk about planning for the individual child. Some of you who are special education majors have had opportunities to write learning or behavioral objectives. Some of you haven't. So let's go through the steps that your authors have outlined. They may be different than what you've learned before, but we will learn a variety of ways to write our objectives. So your objectives are going to include the learner's name, the child's name, the student's name, whatever you want to say there. What is the desired behavior? What is it that the action that you want them to take or accomplish? And then the criterion. So how many times would they do this? How often? How much of the time? How long would they do it for? You wouldn't use all of those descriptors, but you would have some information in your objective that would cover the criterion. Okay? And then the last piece that you want to be sure to have in your behavioral objective is the conditions. So under what conditions or in what situations would you expect your learner to accomplish these objectives? So let's look at a learning or behavioral objective, and let's look at the different components that are here. So I know you know how to read. So what I'm going to ask you to do is think about or label or write down for each one of the learning objectives above there, learner's name, where is that? Maybe circle it or write it down. Okay? The desired behavior. What is the behavior that we are wanting to see demonstrated for Tina? Then the criteria. What is a criterion for what we're expecting her to do? How often? How many? How much? And then what words in this statement for A tell you what the conditions are, the situation in which Tina will do this activity. So hopefully you've had a chance to write these things down or to mark them in some way if you've printed off the PDF for note-taking. So obviously the learner's name is what? Tina, of course. You're absolutely right. And what is the desired behavior? She'll sort all of the objects into smaller groups according to some physical attribute. You're right. The criterion. 6 different times using 6 different sets of materials. And the conditions. This one's tricky because the conditions are listed last, but it's actually the first thing that's written in this objective, and that is when given a mixed group of objects. Right. Okay, so let's do B now. Read it during free play times. Drew will demonstrate 5 new play skills, such as painting, doing puzzles, building with blocks, on 3 different occasions for at least 10 minutes each time. So, what is the learner's name? Great. What is the desired behavior? Okay. What's the criterion? And what are the conditions? When? And what kind of situation? Awesome. You will have the opportunity to do this again in testing opportunities or quizzes, so make sure you're comfortable with picking out the pieces, and eventually, as we work through those 6 large assignments that you turn in after you do your observation, you will be writing learning or behavioral objectives for your case study child. All right, so this one is just a verbal activity. We're not going to write anything down and turn it in for step 3. But hopefully you gain some knowledge about these objectives for planning for an individual child. All right, now let's look at the next 3 pieces. So we've talked about assessing the quality of the classroom. Remember doing that? We talked about the classroom schedule. And we talked about planning for an individual child, which is what we just did. So next we're going to talk about areas of concern for individual children. We're going to use some worksheets to determine what we're going to actually teach this child. And that would next, step 5 would be the activity matrix. And step 6, hang on, where's step 6? Here we go. Implement and evaluate the plan. So we're moving forward. And remember also that as we move on in the semester, we will actually be learning about each one of these steps in depth. We're just kind of getting started here, getting an overview of the steps. So in order to clarify areas of concern for the child, we're going to use a planning worksheet. And section 1, let's see, what page is that on in your book? The IEP today is on page 40 in your Building Blocks book. And you can see that it is filled out for you, for Drew. And I'm actually going to move to that page right now. But just to let you know, that's where you list your IEP goals and your learning objectives. And then section 2 is where you list those activities that you're concerned about that from your child assessment worksheet. Remember that we did a little bit ago? And the concerns, the current supports that are in place, and then the ideas for instruction. We're going to learn about curriculum modification, embedded learning opportunities, and child-focused instructional strategies in the chapters that are coming up. Okay, so this is that planning worksheet, section 1, and again, not a great scan, so I prefer that you look in your textbook at this and review how this is filled out for Drew. So what's the goal or the domain, and what are the current objectives that we have for Drew? And I know you've already read this chapter. You might want to go back and review this. I'm just pointing out some highlights that you want to pay attention to in these chapters. And then the section 2, again, is where you take those concerns that you have during which activities and decide what you're currently doing, which is, let's see if this, oh, wait, not quite ready. There we go. What are you currently doing is this column here. So we already know that what we're currently doing is not working for Drew, or we wouldn't have a concern over here, right? But we got to know about what we're doing right now, so we know we need to change it. And that is that last column, the ideas for instruction. Oh, can't tap the screen or it changes the slide. So are we going to use a curriculum modification? That's the CM, embedded learning opportunity, or a child-focused instructional strategy. And they've chosen a curriculum modification, and they're going to help Drew work independently for at least 5 minutes, respecting boundaries, telling him what materials are his, etc. So you'll have opportunities, and together we'll do more of this as we move through. This is showing you what this looks like. Step 5 already out of 6. Hooray! We are going to learn how to construct an activity matrix. This is for a particular child or for your whole classroom. So I do not have a handout 4.5 for you, but you get a lot of ideas on how to do this through your textbook on the pages that you covered. 43. And we also have, let's see here, we have an example that is filled out. So you're going to enter your schedule on the left-hand column, the learning objectives across the top, and then when can you teach this within your schedule. So this is an example for Tina. I added, printed on there what the names of the row across the top and the column down the left side are, because I think that's very helpful. So again, you've got your schedule, you've got arrival time, planning time, work time, recall, snack, etc. Across the top, you've got those learning objectives for Tina. We're helping Tina learn how to use short phrases to request and to command. So we can do that with Tina during planning time through using a curriculum modification. We're going to have a picture schedule of the choices that she has. And that's how this is used. So you can look across there and get some ideas. And you will actually be filling out an activity matrix later on in the semester for your case study child as well. Okay. This one's for Drew. So a few more examples. And also keep in mind you're getting some really nice examples of different schedules that people have for their preschool classrooms. And this one is for the whole class. So you can see this is a classroom activity matrix. We've got Tina, Tyrone, and Ricky's individualized teaching experiences in with their schedule for their day for the whole classroom. Okay, step 6 out of 6. Yay us. Implement and evaluate the plan. We're going to look at the embedded learning opportunities at a glance, etc. Other worksheets that they have. So this is all about trying your plan. As you probably already know, when you teach, there's several steps, and you can put these in a circle because it continues. It doesn't ever stop. This cycle of teaching. You observe the kids, you assess them, determine what it is they need help with. You make your teaching plans, you try them out, you do your teaching, you monitor their progress, and you observe and you assess, and it just continues around in a circle. Make sure you've got a plan in place of how you're going to evaluate and make sure that your plan and your students are progressing in their learning. That's what step 6 is about. So we've got a sample in the book. Here's an evaluation worksheet for Drew. You've got your concern on the left-hand column. Drew is currently grabbing materials from others and needs a great deal of adult attention. Our plan is to work for 5 minutes, give Drew his own tray and materials, praise him when he is participating, acknowledge his participation. So the evaluation part is important, and you are actually going to create a progress monitoring for your case study child as well. So do you want to evaluate through accounts like tally marks? And I'm looking at the far right column called evaluation information. Do you want to make observation notes, or do you want to assess products that Drew might create or your student might create? So there's further information there about progress monitoring for this student who is Drew. So keep this in mind when it's your opportunity to create a progress monitoring. Okay, so those are the 6 steps for building blocks. We have done it, and we're going to talk now briefly about Chapter 8 in your Blended Practices book.